Hello everyone, this is Mishnah with Jacob. Today, 5/14/2026, we will be learning keilim, Parak 5, Mishnah 11. So all the laws that we learned so far in this chapter have been for ovens and kiras made of earthenware. The Mishnah teaches the law for ovens and kiras made from stone or metal. Tanor shel even v'shel matechet tahor. An oven made of stone or metal is tahor. A stone oven is entirely tahor because stone utensils do not become tameh. A metal oven is tahor in the sense that it does not become tameh the way that an earthenware oven does, meaning that an earthenware oven becomes tameh in a different way that a silver oven or a metal oven would become tameh. The tameh mishum kli metachos, however, a metal oven does become tameh as a metal utensil. That is according to the laws of a metal utensil, meaning that it only becomes tameh through being touched, but not through something entering its airspace like an earthenware oven. Nikav nifgam not nistak. If a stone or metal oven developed a hole in its walls, or a piece broke off from the top of the oven, or developed a crack that runs down the length of the oven, asalo tifla, and the owner made a coating of clay for it in order to seal up the hole or crack or damaged rim, o musav sheltit, or he made an addition of clay to the top of the oven to fix the damaged top. Tameh, the oven becomes tameh under the laws of earthenware ovens. Since the oven cannot function with a hole or crack, and the clay coating is what makes it function again, the oven gets the status of the clay itself, meaning that it becomes the same as like an earthenware oven. So that means that once it's heated to the required temperature, it now has all the laws of an earthenware oven, meaning that if something enters its airspace, it can become tameh. Kamei benekev, how much should the hole measure? That is, how large must the hole in the stone or metal be, so that sealing it with clay will make it into an earthenware utensil. Kedei shiatzeh bo haor, it must be large enough for the flame from the oven's fire to escape through it. Such a hole allows for a lot of heat to escape. Therefore, sealing such a hole with clay restores the oven's usefulness, since it's the clay that makes it usable again. Now, the Mishnah will teach that a stone or metal kira has a similar law of an oven made from these materials. Thus, if a kira develops a hole and the holes are paired with clay, the stone or metal kira is now treated as an earthenware kira. The Mishnah teaches how large the hole in the kira must be for this law to apply. V'chein bakira, and the same holds for a kira, that if a kira has a hole in it large enough for a flame to escape through it and the hole is sealed with clay, the stone or metal kira is now treated as an earthenware utensil. The Mishnah now explains the laws of a stone or metal kira. These are the same as what the Mishnah taught for the stone or metal oven, with one difference. Kira shel even v'shel mateches tahora. A kira of stone or metal is tahor. A stone kira does not become tameh at all because stone utensils never become tameh. And a metal kira does not become tameh the way that your earthenware kiras become tameh. V'tem mishum kli mitachos. However, a metal kira does become tameh as a metal utensil, that is according to the rules of like a metal utensil. But unlike an earthenware kira, where if it enters its airspace, it can become tameh. Nikva nifkema nistika. If the kira developed a hole or a piece broke off from it, or it cracked, and the damage was located at the bottom of the kira, so that the kira could no longer rest properly on the ground, asa la pitfutin, and the owner made feet for it. That is, he placed smaller earthenware legs under the kira in order to hold it up. Tamea, the kira is tameh as an earthenware utensil, since the kira could not be used before it was supported by these feet. It is earthenware feet that enable the kira to be used, and the entire kira is treated as like earthenware, like in the situation before. Mircha bati bein mibifnim bein mibachutz. If you spread clay over a stone or metal kira that is not damaged, whether on the outside or the inside, tahora, it is tahor. That is, it does not become tameh as an earthenware oven. That is because a coating of clay does not significantly improve the cooking of a kira. Rabbi Huda says that mibifnin tameh. If the coating of clay was put on the inside of the kira becomes tameh according to the rules of earthenware utensils. Umibachutz tahora. But if the coating is put on the outside of the kira is tahor from the tum of the earthenware utensils. Now we're on to Parak 6, the first three Mishnah. Now this Mishnah discusses the status of several simple kinds of stoves. If someone arranged 3 clay feet on the ground on a triangle shape, and he attached them to each other at the top with clay, forming a kind of like tripod. Lius shofes alehen at hakadera, so as to be able to balance a pot on top of them and place a fire underneath. Tamea is considered a makeshift oven, and it can become tameh. Kava shlosha masmerin ba'aretz lios shofes alehen hakdera. However, if he stuck 3 nails into the ground so as to be able to balance a pot on top of them, even though he made a flat piece of clay at the top of each nail on which to rest the pot, Torah, it is Tahor. While the 3 nails also qualify as a makeshift stove, they're a metal stove, not an earthenware one. Metal utensils attached to the ground, even stoves and ovens, do not become tameh, as we learned in the end of the previous chapter. Now, the Mishnah discusses another kind of primitive kira made from stones. Hasesh de avanim kira, if someone attends 2 stones to serve as a stove, Behibram betit, and he attached them to each other at the top with clay. Tameh is considered an earthenware stove, and it can become tameh. Rabbi Yehuda matar. However, Rabbi Yehuda disagrees and rules it tahor. Ad she'aseh shlishis, until he arranges a 3rd stone alongside the original 2. So Rabbi Yehuda holds that if there's only 2, then it's still tahor, but if there's 3, it can become tameh. Oad she'ismoch lekotel, or until he places the 2 stones near a wall, so that the wall serves as like a 3rd support for the pot. Furthermore, even if he made the stone out of 3 stones, if he made the stove out of 3 stones, achas batit ve'achas shelo batit, if one stone was attached to the other with clay, but one stone was not attached with clay to either of the 2, tahora, the stove is tahor. The stove is tahor. So now we continue with the second to last Mishnah in Parak 6. Mishnah continues this discussion. Ha'evan shehaya shofes aleya ve'al hatanur, if the stone was used to balance a pot on top of it, and an earthenware oven that was next to it with a fire being lit in it, like the gap between them underneath the pot. Basically saying, imagine you have an actual stove and then a stone, and you're basically putting the pot essentially on the stove and on the stone. So you have like a stove and stone kind of holding up this pot. And so now it's going to talk about this situation. Aleya ve'al akira, or the stone was placed next to an earthenware kira, and the pot was balanced on top of it, and the earthenware kira that was next to it, and the fire was lit in the gap between them. Aleya ve'al kupach, or the stone was placed next to an earthenware kupach, which is a type of oven, and the pot was balanced on top of it, and the earthenware kupach next to it. Tamea. In all these cases, the stone is considered part of a stove, and it becomes tameh. Since the stone is attached to the ground by a layer of clay around the bottom of it, it too is treated as an earthenware, and thus the entire makeshift stove is considered an earthenware kira. The Mishnah lists 3 cases where the stone does not combine with what is next to it. Aleya ve'al ha'evan, however, if the stone that was attached by the clay to the ground was used as a stove by balancing a pot on a freestanding stone that was next to it. Aleya ve'al asela, or on it and a bedrock. Aleya ve'al kotel, or on it and a stone wall. Tahora, it is tahor. While the stone attached by clay to the ground can be considered earthenware, the other part of the stove is simply stone. Therefore, the stove as a whole is not susceptible to toma. Bizo haisa kiras hanazirim shebushalayim. And this is the type of stove used by Nazirim in Jerusalem to cook their shalomim offerings. Shekeneged hasala, it was not made of a stone, set opposite the bedrock of the temple mount in order that it should not be able to become tameh. The Mishnah discusses another example of a makeshift stove, kiras hatabachim. The law of the stove of commercial cooks is as follows: Bisman shu notein even b'tzad even, when he places one stone alongside another stone alongside another stone, and so on, to form a row of makeshift stoves. Neat made achat mahain, and one pair of stones becomes tameh due to tuma, such as a dead sheretz falling into it, which is like a thing that causes tuma. Lut nidma'u kulan, the other pairs of stones do not become tameh. Each pair of stones is treated as a separate stove. Alright, so now we're on the last Mishnah, Mishnah 3. Shlosh avanim she'asa'an shtei kirim. If 3 stones were arranged in a row and made into 2 stoves, nit made achad minha chitzuna, and one of the outer stones becomes tamei because tuma, for example, that sharetz entered the space between it and the middle stone, while the other one remained tahor. Emtza'it, the law for the middle stone is as follows: Hameshet eta hatmea tamea, the side of the middle stone that serves together with the tamei stone to form the stove now becomes tamei, is now tamei. Hameshemeshet hatahora tahor, while the other side of this stone, basically the other piece of the middle stone that helps with the tahor part, is still considered tamei. So essentially, let's see if three stones kind of like laid up like on their sides. So you have two pots on them. So you have a pot that has an outer stone and then part of the middle stone holding it up, and then you have a pot with an outer stone and then part of the middle stone holding it up. So what happens if one side becomes tamei? What happens if one side becomes tahor? So the side that becomes tamei only has that half of the middle stone, but the side that becomes is still tahor has the other half. And now the Mishnah discusses the status of the middle stone when one of the outer stones is removed. Nitla tahora, if the outer stone that was tahor was removed, so that the tahor stove no longer exists. The middle stone becomes assigned completely to the tamei stone, making it completely tamei. So if you take away the tahor stove, and that essentially takes away the outer tahor stone, the middle stone now becomes completely tamei. The Mishnah has so far discussed the laws of a three-stone, two-stove argument in a case where only one of the stoves becomes tamei. The Mishnah now teaches the law for a case in which both stoves become tamei. Nitma'u shtaim hachitzonot. If both of the outer stones becomes tamei, because as sharets fell into each of the two stones, the law of the middle stone is as follows. Im haitad hamsid gedola, if the middle stone was like large or very thick or thicker than the other stones, so that it had room in between the two stones, meaning that, let's say the middle stone was 2 times thick than it was before. So because of that, there's a space in between the two like stoves that it's holding up. And it's saying that if it was large enough that there's room to balance a pot on both sides of it with space left in between, no lazu kedei shifita mekan, he gives the stove enough of a middle to bounce a pot on it on this side. Lazu kedei shipita mekan, and he gives that stone enough, the middle stone, to balance the pot on that side, and both of those sections are tamei, behishur tahor. But the rest of the middle stone, meaning like the space in between, is considered tahor. Vim haita kitana, but if the middle stone was small, less than the amount needed to balance 2 pots, kol tamei, it is entirely tamei. The Mishnah continues discussing the case in which both stoves were tamei. It now discusses the law in a case where the middle stone is removed and the outer stones remain in place. Nitlahem Tzait, if the middle stone is removed, the law is as follows. Imichol lishbot aleya yora gedola. If the gap between the 2 remaining stones is not too big and a large cauldron can be balanced over the 2 outer stones, tamei, it is still tamei because the 2 tamei stones that remain can still be used as a stove. Hechezira, however, if you then put the middle stone back in its place, tahora, it becomes tahor, since the 2 outer stones have again become part of a 2-stone stove arrangement. In this new arrangement can no longer be used to balance a large cauldron. Everything is tahor. This is because the original 2-stove arrangement ceased to exist when the middle stone was removed, and then the extra wide stove that was left in its place has now been broken by the return of the middle stone. Mircha batid, if you then spread clay on it, you reattach the middle stone to the ground with clay, it is like a new stove. Mikabela tuma, and it is fit to become tamei from now on. Mishias kena kedei lavashal aleya etabeta. As soon as he heats it enough to cook a chicken egg on it, it is as the rule for any new stove or oven. Thank you for listening, everyone. This is today's Mishnah for the 4-day cycle. Thank you.